Hey everyone, this is Carbonite, and today I'm going to be bringing you my Solrairon Masques deck profile. So, I guess just to start things off, how did I get involved with Solrairon? So, this actually happened, I think, around BT3, BT2, when I sat down and I actually read some of the Solrairon cards, mostly the two cards that were released in BT2, and I realized almost immediately that both of those cards were actually completely insane. Like, they are the most custom cards I've probably seen since Vanguard's new set order, which we will be updating that deck, don't worry about that. But to get back to Solrairon, I thought those cards were absolutely broken, and then I realized that the Vanguard itself is actually complete duty cakes, which is why those cards are allowed to be so broken. We did get a new form of Solrairon in the form of Solrairon Masques. Unfortunately, it's not as, impactful as the new Shoujo Doji was, but, I still think the deck is both pretty powerful and definitely a lot of fun to play. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and hop straight into the deck profile. All right, so of course, starting off where we always do with the ride line, we are going to be just playing the classic Solrairon ride line. So because I'm pretty sure most people don't really know what this ride line does, we'll go ahead and go over it. So of course your D-star is just your classic D-star, doesn't really matter. And then we have Solrairon, who is, when he is ridden over by the grade 2, you declare either normal unit or trigger unit. You reveal the top card of your deck. And if you get it right, then you get to add the card just straight to your hand. But if you don't, you either leave it on top, or I recently learned this when I actually revealed the Mask of Hydrium, you can actually put the card into your soul, which, kind of just clears up that board. But usually whenever you ride into grade 2, you're always declaring normal unit, revealing the top card. If it's a normal unit, it's just a free plus. But if it's not, you have a trigger stacked on top, which unfortunately both you and your opponent are going to know about. But it does free you up to call down some rear guards to kind of bash face and take advantage of that trigger that is right there, especially if it's something like a front trigger or, God forbid, an over trigger. So that's always fun to see off the top. Now, he does actually have another skill when he's placed on rear. You do the Solrairon draw, which I'm just going to call it the Solrairon draw, which is you reveal a normal unit from your hand, you draw a card, and then you put the normal unit you revealed on top of the deck. That's just to stack your decks for Solrairon skills, but you sometimes use that, you really don't. Because this happens during the ride phase, so there isn't a lot of interesting things to do with it. The only time I'll really use this is if I have a Solrairon Mask in hand. A funny play you can do is you can stack the Solrairon Mask on top and then play Mask of Hydrium, which kind of just guarantees that you're always going to hit 100% of the time, because the Masks is going to be in the top 5. But that is what it is. And then the grade 2, when he is ridden by Solrairon, he pops him both out himself and the grade 1, which is why we're actually able to use that other skill. And then the other skill is that whenever a normal unit gets revealed by your Solraion's effects, any effect, there's actually 2 ways to proc that. He gets the red text skill. At the end of the battle, he attacks, you retire him and countercharge. So this deck is actually very cool in the sense that it can use a lot of counterblast, but it can also refund that counterblast. Effectively, what you can do a full combo play with literally 1 CB, but the main issue, but you typically want 2 CB because you can actually counter. What you want to do is use 2 counterblasts during the main phase, and then you go to your battle phase and you countercharge, and then you counterblast 1 more, and then possibly even countercharge again after that. So just basically getting a free countercharger by riding up to 3 is really good, and just 2 free bodies is honestly really nice as well. So it's an okay ride line. This guy usually will just stick around. He's basically just a vanilla. Sometimes you just need something to throw up into the front row to be a 13k or 23k attacker, which is still a decent number. And just having boosters is fine. I was playing around with playing the Alden grade 1, whatever his name is, Tranquilla, I think. But it just didn't feel consistent enough. I wasn't playing enough grade 1s to really justify it, or any seriously good grade 1s that I really wanted to see. So I figured I'd just stick with the Solrairon. And then normally I would go over what base Solrairon does, which I guess we can quickly, which is just at the beginning of the battle phase, Soul Blast 1, you declare normal or trigger, and then if you get it right, all your units get 5k. So that's all Vanguard and Rearguard I guess it's okay. And then when he attacks you, check top 2, call 1, put the rest on top or bottom. Hopefully you never have to use that skill. It is terrible and not really good. So none of these, since both these skills activate during the battle phase, you're never going to use them because you're always going to be going to Solrairon Masques during the main phase. All right, so moving on into the main deck, of course, we do have to start off with the star of the show, the 4 copies of Solrairon Mask. So, you know, typical mask stuff, he can only be written from a grade 3 Solrairon. He does have like 3 abilities, or no, he has 4 abilities, which is crazy. But the first one is an axe skill. You EV3 and reveal a normal unit to do your Solrairon draw, which actually does proc the grade 2 because it doesn't actually care what ability is reveals the normal unit. So that one procs it, so you'll always have your effects live. And then obviously that's the rest of the Solrairon draw. So then the other skill is an axe. You remove the other Solrairon and you declare either normal or trigger unit and then reveal the top card. If you get it correct, you get the red text skill, which is that whenever your once per turn, when one of your rear guards that was placed by his card ability attacks, you increase or decrease its drive to 1 and you perform a drive check. So it's pretty easy to get that. The hardest thing to do is to get like Solrairons into your drop or soul. Obviously you always have access to 1 because, you know, it's in a ride deck, but you don't really have a problem because you have a Solrairon draw built right into him, so you can always stack the top of your deck to be a normal unit. Particularly something that you want to call off the top most of the time. But then his other skill, which is how we're proccing that red text skill, is when he attacks a Vanguard, you CB1, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, choose the same number of cards as the number of Dragon Tree markers you have, and call them to rear guard. And then I'm not entirely sure how the rest of this skill works. It says put each of the rest on top or the bottom in any order. I believe, like, I've been playing with this as you have to put them all on the rest, all on top or all on bottom, but I believe it does let you choose where the remaining cards go, just because of that each there that I kind of honestly missed. But obviously, you do have 3 drive checks every single turn. You have the access to Persona Ride on turn 3, and your numbers don't unfortunately get that big, but you know, having 5 attacks and like 2 units that are drive checking is always just like a decent amount of pressure, and the deck, you can actually go through the deck pretty consistently. So this is just like this is your main Vanguard, so it's just your enabler. I don't really have much to say else to say other than card good, card fun. Anyways, I'm playing just 2 more copies of Solrairon in the main deck. I know a lot of people try and bump it to 3, but I was noticing that there's actually a lot of good ways you have to not to pseudo search this. And if, of course, you ever see any of these, it's just like pitch fodder. Like if you ever see any of these in your opening hand, you always just keep it so that you can pitch it for ride deck. That way you just have always access to your 3 drive checks. Like I said, it's pretty consistent getting them out. I very rarely have turns where I don't have a Solrairon to remove. The hardest thing is like soul blasting out the ride line Solrairon, so I don't have to bind it from drop or from soul. But yeah, just 2 more copies to, you know, use your skill more than once. And then next up, this card is honestly what I think kind of saves the deck. This is 3 copies of, what's his name? Gledelwin. But anyways, he is a grade 3, and during the battle that he attacks, if you Persona Road this turn, he gets 5k and Battle Door. So before I was playing like 2 copies of the Solrairon grade 3, which is okay because it does get an extra 10k, so it's reaching a little bit higher than this. This caps out at, usually it's on a Dragon Tree marker, so it caps out at 33. The other one would have hit 38, which is still a decent-ish number, because that's still like 15k guards. But this card being a Battle Door is really annoying for your opponent, because like if you think about it, they have to do the 2 15k triggers, but what you want to do is you want to give this card a drive check. So basically you have a 1 more drive check with a Battle Door. So a lot of times, you know, opponents might be like, oh, this is 33, I want to PG this, but you have to use 3 cards to PG this card. Or you can throw down 2 15s, and that is a 45k guard. That is a 1 to pass, which is kind of risky if that ends up breaking, because obviously you're going to stack everything there. So it kind of prompts them to use even more cards past that. So honestly, this card is just really good for the deck. It's been putting in a lot of work. I will say the Solrairon grade 1 does have a little bit of extra utility shielded in the sense that it like lets you stack the top of your deck to maybe revive something. And I was trying to find a way to like stack them to the top of the deck from like the drop zone, but unfortunately there really isn't any good way outside of that grade 3, which, you know, I don't want to play just because like it's going to ruin my consistency a little bit to play even more grade 3s and more non-shield in this deck. So I figured just playing him, and you can always just like stack him with the Solrairon draw, so it's not really a problem if you draw into him, but really good card. And then moving on into our orders, I'm playing the Fire Regalius, just because you do have, there's one card that you definitely need to see. If you've seen the new wrenches, they're basically a 1-card enable your mask play, so you need to see those desperately on turn 2 or by turn 3. Thanks to going into mask being an axe skill, you can actually wait until you get to grade 3 in order to actually use that skill. But this is just another way to get your things off, and this actually does proc another one of your skills, which is like super funny. And then just finishing off the grade 3s, of course, we're just playing 2 copies of the Mask of Hidrugim. I didn't actually explain what Fire Regalius does, but in case you don't know, you just remove it from either a hand or drop, meaning it's good discard fodder. You check top 5, call something equal to or less than your Vanguard. If you didn't call, you just draw a card. Then, of course, Masques Hydrium, check top 5, search for a Masques or a Dragon Tree card, which is good because one of our main pieces is a Dragon Tree card. And then, of course, you slide into Soul Reveal and Masques, Superior Ride, Persona Ride. Very funny. Like I said, you do have funny plays with this where you can use Elrond's skill to Solrairon draw this to the top of the deck, and then just play Mask of Hydrium and add it back. So, you know, little extra more utility than you have in your typical Mask deck. Alright, so moving on into the grade 2s, probably the most important card that you need to see is this one, the new Dragon Tree Wrench for Keter Sanctuary. This is the same thing, it does the same thing as the Dragon Empire one. When it's placed on rare, EB3, search your deck for Mask Hydrium, reveal it, add it to your hand, and then, you know, counterblast 1, bind him, choose one of your rear guard without Dragon Tree markers, put a Dragon Tree mark on it, which if you remember from Solrairon Masks, we do need Dragon Tree markers. Usually you want at least 2, so we'll talk more about that later. But you choose a Dragon Tree, and then you search your deck for, you look at the top 7 for either a Masks or a Griffo Gila. But if it's the first time you're using the skill, you can just search your entire deck. So the first time you see this card, it is just a free full combo. Like, you get the Masks that you need in order to go into the Masks, and you get the actual unit, so it just enables it for free. Like, it just cuts down on so much of the inconsistency of Mask decks. So just like really good. You need to see this card, otherwise it's like very L trying to go into Solrairon Masks, because you have to like draw into both the pieces. But like I said, we have a lot of ways to search this out. Not only do we have the Fire Regalius, but we do actually have another way to search this out. Because like seeing this card, if you don't see this card, you're basically just dead in the water. But like I said, we have a lot of ways to search out. And then the only other grade 2 are playing in this deck is 4 copies of Lectures. Lectures is one of the most custom cards I've ever seen, but it is completely tempered by the fact that it is in a dog shit deck. Look at this shit. So at the end of the battle, he attacked. If a normal unit was revealed by your Solrairon, so, you know, either the remove the Solrairon or your EB3 Solrairon draw, he gets the skill. At the end of the battle, he attacks. Put him into the soul, countercharge 1, and if he was placed from deck, you may draw a card. Which is like, dude, what the fuck? You just have a free soul, free countercharge, doesn't cost anything, and you can draw a card possibly too? Like, what the hell? Like, this card is just like absolutely insane. This is one of the cards that made me want to play Solrairon, because this card is just so insanely good. Like, there are at least 15 decks that would kill for a card of this quality. Mostly in Soikea, TBH, and a lot in Dragon Empire too. But Lectures is just insane. If you think about all the ways, we already talked Fire Regalius procs it. If you stack this on top of the deck with a Solrairon draw, then you call it off Solrairon, it's called from deck. And we have one more card that we're gonna talk about that also calls it from deck. So like 95% of the time, unless you're just like hard calling this from hand, which I do sometimes do when I'm looking for like early game aggro, this card is just insane. It's like you're always gonna draw a card. It replaces itself, it gives you soul, it gives you countercharge. what else is there to say? This card is insane. All right, so moving on into the grade 1s, we are actually going to start off with yet another insane card. This is Efrel, who is probably like the other card that made me really want to play this deck, because this card, also insane. So when he is placed on rear, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter how, if you're on Solrairon, which is the only restriction, so you can't actually use this on turn 2, you have to wait till turn 3, CB1, look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Call up to 2 units. Then, if you did actually call 2 units, you have to choose a card from your hand. If it's a normal unit, it gets stacked on top. If it's not, you discard it. So this card is on place, CB1, you go +2. Well, not necessarily. You technically go +1 because you do have to like stack something. But stacking something enables your Vanguard. So this card is absolutely bonkers. I was playing this card in the earlier Solrairon build just because he can enable multi-attack. So you swing with a Solrairon and then you basically would stack him on top and then you would call him off Solrairon skill because Solrairon before only lets you call 1. But when he gets placed, you CB1 and you can call 2 more units. Now in that build, I was playing like this one dragon that lets you stack the top of your deck. So I would go this, call this here, and then call 2 more things off of his skill, stack a card on top, and then one of the things that he would call out would check the top card of the deck, and I'll just put it on bottom so I can you know, ignore that other effect. But yeah, this card is absolutely insane. It procs lectures, it lets you it's extra copies of this. It lets you get into it so that you have your full play. Efrel has just bailed me out of so many situations. If you're only able to get 1 Dragon Tree marker, you can call Efrel and then call another thing. You can even just like create a full column with him. But Efrel is so good. I will say a lot of the times he does sometimes not feel as good because you do end up with a full board. And unless you're against something that like gets rid of your board, he doesn't really serve too much utility because like you have a full board. Like, okay, what am I gonna do? Call this CB1, check top 5, and then like maybe call 1. No, he's only really good. He helps you search out your pieces, and he is super clutch if you ever get board wiped. Like I was playing this deck into Jet, and they went into Chronos Command, and I'm like, okay, I survive. I have 2 cards in hand, but one of them is Efrel. Let me go ahead and Persona Ride, call Efrel, call 2 more things. I have a trigger in my hand, so I'll just discard it. I now refilled my board, and I'm ready for a full like skill attack. Like Efrel is just so good. Hopefully my gushing about him has shown you just how good he is. One more thing that I forgot to mention about Efrel is that this is another way you have access to searching out your Solrairons, that and Regalius piece, because if you see a Solrairon off this, you're just like, okay, cool, call it, and then you can overcall it later, puts it into drop, so you have it ready to remove. But moving on, we do actually play 2 copies of the Dragon Tree Grade 1 Wrench. This is just because, like I said, your Dragon Tree marker is super important. You need to see at least 1. Preferably you want to see 2. And probably the best way to do it is just this. Like, so it's just on place CB1. It does have this other skill, which you do actually sometimes use. As long as he's in the back row, if something gets placed in front of him, you can CB1 to just draw a card. As you've seen, this deck has like copious amounts of counter charge, so much so that sometimes you counter charge without having any face down damage. So this card is really good in being a card that you can just sink more CB into to enable it so that you can just like counter charge it for free. So it's like a free draw most of the time. The reason why this deck took so long is because I had no idea what to put in this last 4 slot, but I opted to go for 4 copies of Reedy. So Reedy is, if you've played Youth back in, what is it, set 7 meta, you might be familiar with this. She is a act, not once per turn, Soul Blast 2, and then until end turn, increase the trigger power of your triggers by an extra 5k. So that gives you 15k triggers, which makes it easier to break a lot of guards, considering that, you know, triggers themselves are 15k guards, so like having a trigger that hits for 15 is just really good. You do end up with like a copious amounts of soul in this deck, thanks to, you know, obviously your Mask of Hydrogram and lectures going into the soul every time you use him. So honestly, like the Soul Blast 2 cost is like kind of negligible. You can easily like use it twice in a turn and get like 20k triggers. So it's not really that big of a deal. I do have to give shout outs to Curly Haired Vanguard. He did a Solrairon post and he was playing this card, and honestly he really pilled me on it just seeing how he was playing this card, and I think it definitely is really good in the deck. It might stay in. There is a new card coming out that basically allows you to bounce it back to the hand. It's a 13k booster that bounces itself back to the hand. Might consider playing that, but honestly, like in this deck, you don't really have that much shield value issues because you end up like checking a lot of triggers, because like not only is Reedy really good for like giving you those extra triggers, but you need to, the extra trigger power, you need to remember that you have 3 drive checks and you're also checking the top 3 and stacking those. So it's like really, really good in that sense. So you tend to get her off pretty often. So usually you'll get at least one 15k trigger most of the time. All right, so moving into the basic stuff, we're playing 4 PGs. Theoretically, you could play Elementaria here, but like having more normal units is actually kind of relevant. Like there have been certainly a lot of games where I like keep all my triggers and this is the only normal unit I have in my hand, so I have to end up stacking it. So you could play Elementaria, but you got to consider that it's another card that makes you whiff. So honestly, like optimally, maybe just pass on the Elementaria just to play another normal unit. Like it'll come up sometimes, but like you tend to have enough shield that it doesn't really matter, or cards in hand. All right, so for my trigger lineup, apologies for the really wonky triggers. I just could not find for the life of me like the 4th copies. So we are actually playing a full suite of 8 crit here. I do have 3 Blade Edge here, but like I'll be honest with you, it doesn't really matter. The 2k isn't really affecting any of your power lines unless you're you know, trying to do a grade 1 line, which, you know, sometimes does come up. So theoretically, I guess you could play it. You don't really have any need for soul. Like I said, the only thing that uses soul in this deck really is Reedy herself. So you're probably not going to end up calling triggers because like you tend to have a full board of actual good cards. Well, as good cards as they get in Solrairon. So, you know, it's there if you want to have the option, but you know, that's always up to player preference. This deck does actually have a lot of deck out issues, so I'm playing front. Surprisingly enough, I would not play draws in this deck at all because you will 100% deck out. But, you know, front's really good, 20k shield. I guess you could play soul fronts if you're feeling ballsy, but, you know, I tend to like 20k shields. They are pretty good, and like I said, you don't really need the extra soul most of the time. And then, of course, just for our standard stuff, we got our 4 heals. For my over trigger, I'm actually going to be playing red OT here for actually a multitude of reasons. This is actually pretty good. So first of all, you can stack the deck. So if you see OT there, you can always just be like, crit OT? Anyone? GG. But the other main reason that I do like the red OT is you do actually have a unit with Battle Door. So if you do actually stack this on this, they have to guard with 3 PG or 3 card PG on both swings, which just makes it really good. And then potentially one of them can even have like a drive check theoretically. But, you know, that's also just another really good combo. Do note that you won't get the drive check twice because it is just a once per turn. So if you stack the restand skill on him, he will swing, and then you can have him do a drive check. And then after that, he will just restand, but he won't have another drive check because it is just a once per turn. Alternatively, you could play blue OT here just for another crit. You know, it's always just nice to check blue OT in every situation. But, you know, the one thing I would say is probably do not play yellow in this deck because, like I've said before, this deck has deck out problems, and you will just deck out if you play yellow. You could try and play purple, but I don't really think you need to, you know, heal that down that badly. You tend to be pretty tanky enough. Right, so we're gonna go ahead and finish off with like what could be a very good combo stream here. Obviously in this situation, we use 2 CB to go ahead and get our 2 Dragon Tree markers. And then of course we were able to set up, you know, some pretty good columns here. Obviously first we're gonna go ahead and use Reedy's skill. We can Soul Blast out the grade 3 Solrairon in order to, you know, get the extra 5k to your trigger units. And then of course what we're gonna actually do here is we're gonna use the Solrairon draw, EB3 to draw a card. And then this card gets put on top. This is our ideal call target. And then obviously we would want to remove the other Solrairon, reveal the top card of our deck. We know it's a normal unit, so we declare a normal unit and then we'll get the skill. So we'll go ahead and enter our battle phase. We'll swing with the Stragon here. He's going to go ahead and retire himself at the end of the bout and allow us to counter charge. And then we're going to swing with our other column. Do note that anything, if it's ever a grade 1 and a grade 2 on Dragon Tree Marker under Persona 9, they're always going to be hitting for 33, which is a very good number, especially when you're attacking 5 times per deck for 5 times per turn. We'll go ahead and, in this case, use the Lectures to counter charge yet again. And then we're going to go ahead and swing with our Solrairon Masques. We're going to check the top 3 cards of the deck. And then since we do actually have access to 2 Dragon Tree Markers, we're going to be able to call 2 and then put the rest on either the top or the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and call a Lectures here. It doesn't really matter too much. And then we're going to put this one on top. Now, if you see another normal unit or like a PG, something you want to do, you can actually, in this instance, oh, we forgot you had to counterblast for Solrairon, of course. Because this is active at any time, you could theoretically counterblast here. Like, let's say instead of seeing a front there, you see like a PG that you want to have in hand. You can just stack it on, or yeah, let's say you see instead of that front, you see a PG. You could just stack it on top, CB1, draw a card, and now your stack is refreshed yet again. But in this case, we would go ahead and swing. We'll get that front trigger, and then of course a blank there. That's plus 15 to the entire front row. And now this, being on the Dragon Tree Marker and the Persona Ride, is going to be swing for 33 with Battle Door, and we'll go ahead and give the drive check. And then if we had hit anything, we would give it to Lectures. Lectures would swing, put itself to Soul, counter charge, so we're all set for next turn. And then since he was placed from deck, you draw yet another card. So just from that one exchange, we basically went from a 1-card hand to a 6-card hand, so we plus 5 there just by doing that, which is why I said this deck tends to be a lot more tanky than you would expect. But yeah. All right, so that's going to do it for my Solrairon Masques deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to do those YouTube things, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.